and welcome to ABC Interactive English. I'm Mike.
And I'm Hanny.
And welcome back to part 2 of our Window on the World unit for this month. Yesterday, article titled Junk Art, Turning Trash into Works of Art, we met a very talented young man by the name of Frederick Peary.
Frederick is an artist who lives in the Central African country of Zambia, and he makes art in a very different way. He turns old bits of scrap metal from broken machines and bicycles and things like that into art. Really cool art. He has created small sculptures of African animals like giraffes, hippos from some of this metal junk.
That's absolutely right. And he also created a whole map of Africa from bits of old machines. It's really beautiful work. And when you think of how he made it, you are even more impressed. I know I am.
But while Frederick may certainly be an interesting young artist working today, he isn't the first person to turn old junk into art. In fact, as we will be reading and learning about it in today's article, junk art has quite a long history. And after seeing some of Frederick's art, I think that's great.
Me too. So let's begin reading today's article right after we learn about the new vocabulary words that we will be using.
好，在今天的课程中，我们要来进一步了解垃圾艺术。垃圾艺术是起源于20世纪初期，当时有一群艺术家认为任何东西都能成为艺术品。那我们先来看单字 early。early 它是指早期的，在这边当形容词用。那么文中用到 in the early 20th century 就表示在20世纪早期、20世纪初的意思。好，例如 Cats are active in the early morning and late evening. Cats are active in the early morning and late evening. 猫在清晨和深夜的时候很活跃。好，课文接着写到说，垃圾艺术家善于利用从家里垃圾堆还有其他地方找到的物品，那他们渴望为这些废弃物品来赋予新的生命和意义。好，这边有3个单字 object 它表示物品，是个名词。例如Some street vendors are selling handmade objects. Some street vendors are selling handmade objects. 有一些摊贩在卖手工制品。下一个单词 pile 在课文里面是当名词来表示堆，我们就可以用 a pile of 加名词来表达一堆的什么东西，像是 There's a pile of dirty dishes in the sink.There's a pile of dirty dishes in the sink. 水槽里面有一堆脏碗盘。最后一个单字 desire 它表示渴望、想要，那它可以当名词或动词，在课文里面它是动词的用法。例如 Some people desire fame, power, and wealth. Some people desire fame, power, and wealth. 有些人渴望名声、权力还有财富。好，那现在看完单字例句，我们来读课文吧。
Junk art began in the early 20th century. A group of artists saw fine art differently. They believed they could make art from anything, so they fought against the use of traditional materials.
Explanation 1.
Okay, so part 2 of our article about junk art, like we mentioned, gets into the history of this unique kind of art. In the first sentence, we learn junk art began in the early 20th century. That is interesting. So it's only been around for about 100 years.
Yes, and if you think about it, that kind of makes sense. Modern factories have allowed us all to have more stuff and make it all much more cheaply. So that creates more junk. And so, more junk for the artists.
There you go. That's a good point. So let's keep reading after we talk briefly about a new word that we saw in that first sentence. The word is early. Now, this just means in or near the beginning of something. It's sort of a time, but it's not an exact time, like saying something o'clock or something like here. So here, in the sentence, we said the early 20th century. So that would be 1900, 1910, up until 1920, maybe.
Right, so there were lots of artists doing famous work before that time,
Sure.
right? But they were doing it in a more traditional way with paint or maybe by carving things out of stone. But as we read on, we learn a group of artists saw fine art differently. 好，课文写到，在20世纪初期，有一群艺术家对美术有不同看法。他们认为万物都可能成为艺术品，所以就反对使用传统素材。好，来看补充单字。Fine art 表示美术，那么 material 可以表达材料素材。麦克老师提到说，比较传统的方式呢，可能是指说油画啊，或是石雕之类的艺术品。好，那老师用到 carve 这个动词就可以表达雕刻、刻凿的意思。Well,they might have felt at that time that the old way of painting and making sculptures was just a bit boring.
Right, and so they decided that they could try something new. As we reach the break, we read, they believed they could make art from anything, so they fought against the use of traditional materials.
Well, a lot of older artists at the time might have thought that these young artists were just causing trouble, and many people might have not liked their art at first. But that's often what happens when you try to shake up the way people have been doing things for a long time.
True.
Now let's take our break after we learn more about our first grammar point, which we saw in that last sentence.
大家好，我是 Daphne。今天的第一则文法是 A fights against B， 意思是 A 努力反抗 B。Fight 是不及物动词，意思是奋斗，三态是 fight, fought, fought。Against 是介系词，意思是反抗、对抗。我们来看个例句 ：The leader fought against wars。这个领导人努力反抗战争。
Okay, so it looks like it's break time now. Let's go and do that, and then we'll come back to keep reading. Junk artists use objects that they find. They get them from their homes, trash piles, and other places. Most people consider those objects to be garbage. However, junk artists see the value in them. They desire to give the waste new life and purpose. Junk artists hope people can look at art, trash, and the world with fresh eyes.
Explanation 2.
So, a group of young artists who were making art about 100 years ago were feeling that art was getting maybe just a bit boring. They were tired of the old styles of paintings and sculptures that everyone was making, and so they decided to try something different.
And so they decided to make art out of junk.
Right.
The broken old bits of things that people were throwing out. Bits of wood, metal, or anything else really that they would find.
There you go, and that's how you do it. As we read next, junk artists use objects that they find. Some old junk and some great ideas. That's all you need. And this word object, which is another of our new vocabulary words for today, is just a thing. It's a thing that you can see and you can touch. We wouldn't use this word to describe a person or maybe even an animal, but lots of other things could be described as an object.
So where do junk artists find the objects that they use to make their art? Well, the article tells us they get them from their homes, trash piles, and other places. Well, basically anywhere you might find things that people aren't using or don't need. Okay, the word pile is another new word for today, and it is just a group of things lying one on top of the other. If you take a lot of school books out of your bag and don't put them away, they might just end up in a pile on your desk.
Right, and when people make lots of garbage, it might get collected from their homes and then taken somewhere and just dumped in a pile. And most people wouldn't want what was in that pile, right? Well, as we read next in the article, most people consider those objects to be garbage. A broken old machine, a bicycle that doesn't work anymore. Sure, I would probably call that garbage, but then again, I'm not a junk artist. And we'll find out what they can do with what other people might call trash right after we learn more about the second grammar point of the day.
第二则文法是 A considers B to be C， 意思是 A 将 B 认为是 C。Consider 是及物动词，意思是认为，把点点点视为，后面先接 be 当受词，再用 to be 是引出受词的补语 C， 其中 to be 是可以省略掉的哟。我们来看一个例句 ：Philip considers his cat to be his son. Philip 把猫咪当作自己的儿子。
So, there it is, a pile of trash. I can see some old clothes in there, a broken toy or two. Is that a coffee machine with the coffee pot missing? What good is that?
Well, those things are just trash and garbage to you, right?
Yeah.
Me too. But here's the important point. We aren't junk artists. It might look like pieces of junk to most of us. However, our article continues. Junk artists see the value in them.
And for many of them, it's not just about making art. What they use to make their art is also important to them. As it says next, they desire to give the waste new life and purpose. That's cool. They want that broken coffee machine to have a whole new life as art. Kind of lovely, isn't it? And to desire is basically just to want something really, really badly. It's the same sort of feeling as wanting, but it's much more powerful feeling.
And so with this desire to give old things a new life, junk artists also hope to give the rest of us a new way of seeing all of the things around us, especially the things we might just throw away without thinking. As it says in our last sentence of our article, junk artists hope people can look at art, trash, and the world with fresh eyes.
And with more and more trash all around us in the world, that sounds like something that could be a big help for us and for our planet. Okay, we have one more grammar point to learn about, and then we'll be back.
第三则文法是 look at something with a fresh eye。意思是以新的眼光看待某事物。Look at 是动词片语，意思是看。With 是介系词，意思是用。Fresh 是形容词，意思是崭新的、截然不同的。Eye 是名词，意思是眼光。我们来看一个例句 ：Muriel looked at her job with a fresh eye after her illness. Muriel 生病后，看待工作的眼光截然不同。
All right, folks, thanks for joining us. We hope you have enjoyed and maybe even learned something from our article this month. We could all probably stand to make less junk, be more creative with the things that we own, and also help to support talented young artists like Frederick Peary. After all, it's the talented artists like him who help to make the world a more beautiful place no matter what they make their art out of. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, take care of the planet, and we'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Junk art, turning trash into works of art.
Junk art began in the early 20th century. A group of artists saw fine art differently. They believed they could make art from anything, so they fought against the use of traditional materials. Junk artists use objects that they find. They get them from their homes, trash piles, and other places. Most people consider those objects to be garbage. However, junk artists see the value in them. They desire to give the waste new life and purpose. Junk artists hope people can look at art, trash, and the world with fresh eyes.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny， 又到我们1分钟的单元喽。那我们今天用1分钟的时间来复习4个单字，同学们您都准备好没？1分钟计时开始。第一个单词，它可以当形容词来形容是早期的，这个字也可以表达早的，它叫做 early。The actor is in his early 20s。那位演员大约是20岁出头。我们说 20s 就是指20几岁嘛，然后前面加个 early 早期的，那就表示20岁、20几岁这个早期初期呢，就是20岁出头了。OK， 第二个单词是物品，物品怎么说呢？叫 object。Holly likes to take photos of everyday objects. Holly 喜欢拍日常用品的照片。好，第三个单词是指堆，一堆要怎么说？叫做 pile。我们常用 a pile of 什么什么来表达一堆什么 pile。OK，there's a pile of yellow leaves on the ground. 地上有一堆枯黄的叶子。第四个单词它可以表达渴望，可以表达想要，它是个动词，像这个字叫做 desire， 它其实也有名词的用法。那我们用动词造句哦。Everyone desires to be happy， 每个人都想要快乐，我要快乐。你们可不知道有没有听过这首歌？好，不管怎么样，我们在1分钟之间复习完单字，我还偷偷唱了一句。那我们就下次见喽，拜拜。
Xingnan Night Market is in Zhonghe, New Taipei City. It covers the area between Xinyi and Jingxin Street. It is very close to Nanshijiao MRT station. The night market is filled with shopping choices, including shops with clothes, shoes, and electronics. Visitors can find cheap Japanese food and popular favorites too, like spicy duck blood soup and stinky tofu. Tofu pudding and pearl milk tea are great choices on a hot day. Traditional Taiwanese snack lovers must visit Xingnan Night Market.
See you next time!